Welcome to the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce 2020 Primary Candidate Forum. I'm Jacqueline Pitts, and I'll be your moderator tonight. I'm the Communications Director for the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to thank our sponsors tonight, the Frankfort Plant Board and Frankfort Plant Board Cable 10, for producing and hosting our event tonight. So tonight we are talking to the candidates for jailer for Franklin County, and each candidate will start with a 1-minute opening statement, and then we will go in alphabetical order to answer the panelists' questions following that. So panelists, you will be muted. You should have yourself muted unless you're answering a question, and once your time expires, you will then be muted. And you will have a clear indication of timing on the screen. You'll see a 15-minute or 15-second indicator, and then we will let you know when your time is up as well. Please be respectful of this timing so that we can get to as many important questions as possible. And we'll also, you should all be prepared to give a 1-minute closing statement where no new issues should be raised. This is an opportunity for you to state your objectives and your goals and restate any positions that you've already covered. So now let's meet our panelists for the evening. We have Kristen Cantrell, who is the CEO and owner of Seven Mountains Media and Capital City Communications, Kathy Lindsay, who is the Communications Director for the Frankfort Plant Board, and Steve Stewart, who is the publisher at the State Journal. And now let's meet our candidates. We have Jake Bonta, Richard Standifer, and Tracy Hopper. So we'll get started. Panelists, are you ready? We will go ahead and start with Kristen. And Kristen, you'll direct your first question to Mr. Bonta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Appreciate that. Mr. Bonta, let's get right to it. So what ideas do you have to cut costs and increase revenue at the jail?
Well, thank you for the plant board and all of you all being here tonight. To get to your question is we're dealing with budget now, and we've made some big cuts already, and we have a meeting tomorrow to go even further. We've reduced spending as much as possible. It's a tightrope that you have to walk to make sure that you have enough staff. We have to feed them. We have to clothe the inmates. We have to feed the inmates and make sure they get medical treatment. You have to make sure that gets done. At the same time, when you're cutting, we have to make sure that we are as aggressive as possible to go after, to go after revenue. And that's going to be tough during this pandemic, but we're going to work and make strides to do that. Thank you for your question.
Okay, next up we have Tracy Hopper, who will answer the same question from Kristen.
Cutting costs would be, we need to really look at some of the jobs, the positions that are out there. We may have some jobs that can be cut that are not necessary to the jail, and that would be one of the first things that I look at. We used to have a whole fleet of vehicles that maybe we didn't need. That would be some cost-saving things. And as far as promoting revenue, you know, I'll always stick with training and building these programs in order to bring the revenue back to the jail.
And Mr. Standifer, same question to you. And then this is my mistake. I forgot to let you guys have your opening statement. So after you answer this question, Mr. Standifer, we'll start with Mr. Bonta again, and you guys can give your opening statements. But let's go ahead and wrap this question up first. And you're muted, so unmute yourself, please.
Me?
Yes.
All right, I'm ready.
Yes, go ahead.
Tonight, as far as the budget goes, I think there's a lot of ways to cut waste in the jail. My understanding from people that I talk with, it's not pretty wasteful. There's revenue to be had. I agree with Tracy on programs. There's a lot of different programs that I've checked into throughout the state and in other states, and they're working fine. I don't know why we're not implementing them here. As far as other things with the budget, there's a lot of money that can be saved in a lot of different ways. My phone won't stand up here. I just don't, there's a lot of ways, and I've got a lot of plan to make changes that will help the taxpayer.
Perfect. Okay, so now let's get to our opening statements. Again, my mistake. So Mr. Bonta, go ahead with your 1-minute opening statement.
Thank you again. Thank you all for having us. I was appointed the jailer. I've been blessed to be appointed the jailer back in September. I've been the jailer now for 9 months approximately. I've learned a lot, and I've been associated with the jail for 19 years. I've held 2 jobs in the county, either at the sheriff's office or the jail, but I've always been attached to the jail in some way, fashion, or form. So I understand how the jail works inside and out, and I understand things that we need to do to get better. And we're doing that. Prior to COVID, we were going in the right direction. We were fully staffed. We were getting training on an upscale, more training. I've brought in some people that have, they were already there, that have many years of training. So we're doing great things. I'm asking for the people to keep me there to continue that path.
Perfect. All right, Ms. Hoffer.
I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Frankfort Plant Board for hosting this forum, and a big thank you to my family and my supporters. This is a very important election for Franklin County taxpayers. I have been focusing on 3 major issues in Franklin County: treatment, training, and transparency. I am committed to finding ways to find ways for inmates to make the most of their time locked up. I will strive to retain top talent, decreasing turnovers through training, and creating the excellence of pride. I am wholly committed to making the jail's budget and safety open for viewing. By focusing on these items, I believe we can bring about true purpose of care, custody, and control back to the jail.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Sandifer, your 1-minute opening statement.
I believe I could do the jail a lot of good due to my background as far as a business. It's been stated it's not a business, but it's a business. You buy something, sell it for profit, you're a business. And as far as training, I've got an officer in mind to bring in for training. He's career military, career police, done a lot of training things in his life. He's gonna make it a lot better. As far as the transparency of the jail, I think the public ought to know everything that's going on. There's a lot of things that's been hid, misled, and it don't need to be that way. If the public wants to know something, they need to know it. And if I'm there, I'm going to make sure they know it. I just think that it ought to be an open book. We're the ones paying the bills out there, and we should know where our money's going and what it's going for. As far as the inmates, education, I'm a firm believer in education for them. There's a lot of things they can learn through different programs that will make them a better citizen when they get out. Training, get them a better job, work with the local businesses to.
Sorry, you were out of time on that one. I'm sorry. We can get to that again, hopefully in one of the questions. So now we'll move to round 2 of questions, where Kathy Lindsay will start with her question directed at Tracy Hopper.
Okay. Hey, Tracy, how you doing?
Hi, Kathy, how are you?
I'm good. My question is one about the drug problem that we have. Not only is it an issue that Franklin County is facing, but there is a nationwide epidemic of drug addiction. That's something you'll probably have to deal with as jailer in the jail. So my question is 2 parts. How will you ensure that the addicted inmates get the necessary and critical treatment that they need? And how will you ensure that inmates do not have access to drugs within the facility?
Inmates bringing contraband in is age old, and it's one of those things that if we are training our officers to watch for this coming in the back door, then, you know, we're going to cut down on that. As far as the treatment part of it, we have to build our programs, and you're always going to hear me talk about building programs, substance abuse programs, educational programs, vocational programs. We've got to get these people educated, and we've got to get them work ready, and we've got to get them ready to go back into society.
Mr. Sandifer, same question to you. And again, everybody, these are time limited and you will be muted if we go over, and we'll just try and stop you at the end of your sentence. So Mr. Sandifer, same question to you.
I think treatment is a big answer towards the drug problems. As far as people coming in, they've got to be treated. They got to have health care. You can't refuse people medical care. I've heard numerous people that got out of jail come in and see me at my job, wanted to complain they didn't get medical care. And it's ridiculous. As far as stopping the drugs from getting into jail, you stop the inmates from bringing them in, then you back up. If it's still getting in, it's got to be an employee. As far as I'm concerned, every employee at the jail, including the jailer, can walk through the body scanner every day when they walk in that jail. And you're bound to be able to stop it. It's a secured building. So there's no reason for it to get in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bonta, same question to you. You're muted. There we go.
I'm muted.
Yes, you are unmuted now.
Thank you for your question. We have a body scanner at the jail, and it is a great tool. It was purchased prior to me being there, but it doesn't stop everything. It's a tool. Inmates find ways to get things through. Not everybody comes through that door is not intelligent. They're intelligent people too. I fought the crime against drugs, the fight against drugs in Franklin County for several years. I worked as narcotics. I know what the drug problem is, and we combat it as much as possible. The dry cell issue needs to be looked at. We're working on that. Furloughs seem to be an issue. Inmates get out, go to the dentist, and guess what they bring back? More than a fixed tooth. Our investigator does a great job of combating crime, no matter drugs or crime, in the jail. And we're going to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, for our next round of questions, we will have Steve Stewart from the State Journal direct his first question to Mr. Sandifer to start.
Thank you, candidates, for putting yourselves before the voters. I think this is really important, and commend you all for it. In 2018, an outside law firm was hired by the county at an expense of about $13,000 to investigate allegations of rampant sexual harassment of female employees at the jail. That investigation concluded that indeed there was a culture of sexual harassment perpetuated almost entirely by one man, the then Chief Deputy Jailer Kelly Rouse. He was allowed to retire with full benefits after a period of being on paid leave. A heavily redacted version of the law firm's report was given to the taxpayers. Among those things redacted were the recommendations for cleaning up the culture of sexual harassment. If you had been jailer at the time, would you have handled that any differently than the way then Jailer Rogers handled it?
Mr. Sandifer, we'll start with you.
All right. I think once that it was proven that he was guilty or found to be involved in it, I think he should have been fired, charged, and prosecuted for it, and given the appropriate amount of time that's deserved for them charges. And I think that would stand for me, any other employee or elected official. If that happens, you should be prosecuted for it. Why should he have been relieved, put on administrative leave and got paid, even if he didn't get paid or not? He should have been charged, because what makes a deputy jailer being a chief deputy or the jailer herself above the law? If it had been a common citizen, they would have been charged, and he should have been as well. That's my stance on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonta, you're up next for that question.
I understand the question, and I appreciate the question. We will not tolerate sexual harassment at Franklin County Regional Jail. I wasn't there during that time, but your question is what would I've done with it? I would have talked to my county attorney that would be prosecuting it, and I would have used his guidance. I'm not sure if that was the case then or not. I wasn't there, but I would have called my county attorney and got guidance from him. He's the prosecutor, not me, and I would have followed his guidance.
Thank you.
And Ms. Hopper, question for you as well.
First, he would have been fired immediately. And secondly, he would not have been allowed to sit at home all this time, waiting on his retirement. He was just within a short amount of days of retiring before he left and before these allegations came out. He, rode off into the sunset, literally, in a county car and drove it home to wherever he lives. And we paid him while he sat there. And, that's absolutely unheard of. It's ridiculous. I don't care if he is your friend. He is probably going to create one of the biggest problems that Franklin County's seen in 20 years, this man and his actions.
Okay, so we will go back to Kristen for our next question, and we will start with Mr. Bonta again for that.
Several of you have mentioned treatment, transparency, training, things of that nature, and other programs that you've studied or you've seen that work well in other locations or other states, other municipalities. Of those programs, what's the most innovative one that you would enact if you were jailer to make the greatest impact in our jail?
That's me first, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. We already have programs at the jail, and I want to expand them as soon as this COVID's over and budget allows it. We have the RISE program. We have the GED program, which is top notch in the state. We have the NCRC program, the moral recognition therapy, the anger management, and untangling relationships. We have a Lieutenant Mulder up there that is constantly teaching, and each one of these programs gives inmates time off their sentence. To add other programs, they have to be sanctioned by jail standards. You have to have the staff, you have to have the finances, you have to have the space. I know SAP's been brought up. I think SAP was tried to get in the jail before my time. It just didn't fit because of the jail standards and the DOC standards.
Okay, Ms. Hopper, you're up next for that question.
We have currently a program out there ran by Ashley Mulder, excuse me, and, it's got a good foundation. Unfortunately, for the last 5 or 6 years, no one's ever given it legs. No one's ever funded it and made it bigger. And by doing this, we would be in a win-win situation right now with as far as funding the program, and it would be a win for the jail. And then we would be able to ask for a higher per diem. It's a shame that, I think this program was designed in 2017, and it's a great program. It's a reentry program, and that's very important because there's so many aspects under that umbrella of reentry that we can do.
And Mr. Sandifer, we'll wrap that up with you.
The program I'm talking about is a local inmate program, one of them, and it would reduce the population of the local inmates by letting them work their fines off instead of laying it out in jail, costing us double. We lose the fine, we lose money by housing them. You're not going to get the fine money out of most of them. They lay it out because they're not scared of the jail. They know they can go up there and lay 4 days out their fines history or whatever at $50 a day. You can work this work program. As far as it being sanctioned by the state, it's working in other county jails right here in Kentucky. So if it's not permissible to be in our jail, then we must have a problem at our jail that needs to be corrected to make it work there. And I think that it's beyond reason that we got to figure out a way to stop getting these same people month after month. The same ones are in jail.
Unfortunately, we are out of time for that response. So next we will move to Kathy Lindsay, who will direct her question to start with Ms. Hopper.
Okay, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to tell us what you think the biggest issue is at the jail right now and how you will address it if elected.
Leadership, training, culture, and we have to have a leader that is present every single day. You can't come in for 15 or 20 minutes, take a look around and walk off. You have to be there. You have to be present in order for things to change. You know, we need a leader that understands that this job title is just not about coming in and signing the bills and walking out. You have to be dedicated to this job, and I am dedicated to Franklin County and serving the taxpayers of the Franklin County Jail.
Okay, Mr. Sandifer, we'll move to you for a response to that same question.
As far as agree, the way the jail's run is a problem. When the public call, they can't talk to somebody, they're blown off. If you refuse to give your name because you want to complain on someone that works there and you want to talk to one of the two head people, you refuse to be allowed to do so. People that go do visitations, people that try to come and bail somebody out, they're treated like dirt. And there's no excuse in that. Again, the public is the one paying the bills there, and they should be treated with respect. And it would be if I was in charge. And the inmates, the same complaint. They're treated poorly as far as being a human being, and it's uncalled for. Lack of medical care that needs to be fixed.
And finally, Mr. Bonta, your response.
The question for me, please.
Sure. What do you see as the biggest issue at the jail right now? And if elected, how will you address it as jailer?
The biggest issue at the jail right now is keeping COVID-19 out. It has been since April. And we've been successful. And I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to jinx it. It only takes one person to come in there to infect the jail, and we have a serious problem. We've taken drastic measures to keep it out, and we've done that. Then the next step is going to be recovering from this COVID-19. Mr. Sanford speaks about not being able to get a hold of me, and all you got to do is leave a message. I'll call you back. I have parents calling me constantly that want to talk to their kids, and I understand that, and I will call them back. But right now, we have to recover with revenue from this COVID-19. And then as soon as we do that, then we can start with the programs and stuff of that nature and expanding that. But right now is recovery.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next round. Steve Stewart will start us off with a question. And I believe it will be Mr. Sandifer's turn to start.
Former Jailer Rogers introduced tablets for inmates during his tenure as a means of helping inmates educate themselves, rehabilitate themselves, and as a revenue generator for the jail. Would you continue the use of tablets by inmates if you were elected?
Yes, I think it's a good thing, and as long as it's being used for the right reasons. But the biggest part of it, I think it was gone after for revenue. But it's a good used educational tool, and I think they're limited on time they get to use it as far as for calling home or having FaceTime, as I guess it's called, with family members. But it's a good educational tool. There's a lot to be learned.
Okay, Mr. Bonta, you're up next.
It's a fantastic tool. I was a little skeptical about it too when I first started because you have to police it. Our investigator watches it constantly. It's huge in education. They're taking some classes on it. But the biggest thing it's done is during this COVID, I've had to stop in-person visitation at the jail to protect us. And the company, GTL, gave every inmate gets 30 minutes free visitation a month. And GTL expanded that and doubled it throughout this period. It's been huge for the families to be able to talk to the inmates and vice versa. It's a fantastic tool. Revenue is a plus. It's actually exceeded a little bit of what Jailer Rogers thought it would do. Not by much, but a little bit. But any extra is better than nothing. So it's a fantastic tool. I plan on keeping it and expanding it.
And Ms. Hopper, your response.
I will definitely continue the use of some type of electronic device for educational reasons, and looking at I think they like to say that using these devices cuts down on movement in the jail, cuts down on contraband. I'm not so sure that I buy into that one, but I'm not sure about that actual GTL, that that company at all. I think if we look a little deeper and scratch the surface and we see who the sales rep was and who we bought that from, and then see whose campaign he's contributed to, we might consider not doing that.
All right, we will move to the next round of questions. Kristen, you are up, and your question will go to Mr. Bonta first.
Okay, so this is kind of a two-part question, and I'm kind of going on the fly a little bit here. So the main question is, how would you better communicate with the public the good work or the programs that you're doing at the jail? And in that communication program, what would you communicate to the public that they could do to lessen the amount of people that go to jail?
First part of your question is transparency is important. As I said earlier, most news from the jail is usually bad news. That's how it's been for years. It's changing because Zoom and Facebook and stuff of that nature. We have a Facebook account that we utilize as much as possible. I let other staff do that. I'm not a huge computer person, but we try to communicate with the jail, with the people from the jail, to let them know what's going on as much as possible. Communication is something always that we can, as a community, can work on. And we're not perfect. We can work on getting better with that. And I'm open to ideas for that. Volunteers can get involved. We're always looking for volunteers to assist. We take paperback books on a daily basis, but I'm open for suggestions with that.
Ms. Hopper, you're up next for that one.
Getting the information about the programs, that's going to take community involvement. That's the key to the success of these programs, having your volunteers come in. And as far as getting the message out about what we're doing, that's where we're going to depend on actual outside sources, talking about us, instead of, just putting a picture on Facebook with our own little script of what's going on there. You want other people to promote you. That's key in getting these higher per diems too, is, becoming accredited and becoming, a community-based programs. And I think it's really important that other people are tooting your horn as opposed to you.
Okay, and Mr. Sandifer, we'll go to you.
I'm unmuted. All right. As far as letting the public know what's going on, I think the newspapers are a great source. People say they want good things from the jail. All they like is the bad news. I think that it would change if you start giving the public the information. The public will want to get involved. You can do it through Facebook, Twitter. There's so much out there. There's no reason why the public don't know what's going on. And nobody seems to know what's going on at the jail. I agree. Facebook's a great tool. They got a website. I've got my own Facebook page. If I was there, I'd publish it on both, as well as the newspaper. The newspaper, I'm sure, would be glad to finally see some good news from the jail, because all we ever hear, like Jake said, is the bad news. And that seems to be full of bad news. But it still needs to be put out to the public. It don't need to be brushed under the rug or hid.
Okay. I believe we have a couple more questions. Kathy, you'll go ahead and ask your next one, and we'll start with Ms. Hopper for it.
Okay. If elected, what steps would you take to reduce the risk of lawsuits by inmates?
Leadership. Leaders being there at the jail, being present. Training is huge, and we have to have an amount of compassion when dealing with inmates. Another big thing is we need to take a really hard look at our medical contract and see what's going on, and I need for them to know what my expectations are of them. And with that being said, we've had babies born and deaths occur out there at that jail. And, these are things that are 100% preventable, 100% preventable if people are doing their jobs.
We will move to Mr. Sandifer next for that question as well.
I think the jail will always have lawsuits because people's going to sue. It's just part of being a jail. But I think they can be reduced by having adequate training, adequate people, and you can't do enough for training. But respect has a lot to do with it. And the people that's getting arrested, just because they're in jail, don't mean they're complete, slob people. You've got to treat them with respect to a point. If they don't want to cooperate, put them in a holding cell and let them sit. But you cannot disrespect them just because they're coming into the jail. They're still citizens most of them are citizens of this county, and they should be treated accordingly. They're all some sort of taxpayers at one point or another, and they're still human beings, and they should be treated as humans.
And finally, for that question, we will move to Mr. Bonta.
Thank you. I've been in the county for 19 years in law enforcement, started at the jail. There was lawsuits then. It was a little less then, but there's always going to be lawsuits. It's a matter if they're correct or not. But to answer your question, training is big. We want to update training. I want to look through the policy and procedure. Policy and procedure book is this thick at the jail. Franklin County Sheriff's Office is about this thick. We need to update that. It takes time, and we're working on it. Training is huge, though. They're required 24 hours of training. As a police officer, you need 40 hours, and when I was a police officer, we always got more than that. Training is huge. And I'm going to agree with Mr. Sanford. It's about respect. And I walk around all day long talking about glass half full. Not everybody in that jail is bad people. Treat them like human beings. And I think we're doing that. When you're hiring people at $14 an hour, it's hard to hire people at $14 an hour. So
Sorry, we're out of time for that. And then finally, Mr. Stewart, did you have another question, or are we ready for everybody to make their closing statements? You're muted.
I don't know what. Do we have time?
Are we? Carmen, do you think we have time?
Let's do it.
For it.
Yeah, let's do one more. Okay, so Steve Stewart, one more question from you as well.
Contraband is an age-old problem for jails. I know nobody's naive enough to think it can ever be stopped completely, but would you do anything innovative to reduce the flow of contraband into the jail?
And that will go to Mr. Sandifer first.
I agree that the body scanner is a good idea. I've seen it in work, and it picks out a lot. I don't think a great deal could be hid through that body scanner. The dry cell is a good idea as far as, if you believe that somebody does have something, it's a way of getting them to put it out outside of doing the body scanner, and just have a good investigator to try to keep an eye on things in the jail. All you can do is work at it. It's a trial and error base, I guess.
Mr. Bonta, we'll move to you next for that.
I agree. The body scanner is a fantastic tool. As she's got the stop thing up, I don't know what she's doing.
Oh no,
Maybe
it's not you.
The body scanner is a great tool. It doesn't catch everything. I've seen it firsthand. Somebody goes out on furlough, they eat half a hamburger, drugs, half a hamburger, it's a blob. So the dry cell has to work. Better training, better pat downs. Search gets on a fine line there. The investigator is a huge tool. Ron White does a fantastic job. I'm not going to quote any numbers because I've had numbers in my head all day with budget, but he's constantly watching stuff. Watched an officer give extra trays the other day. That's how minute it can be. It starts with a tray being manipulated by an inmate. An inmate has, we try to keep them busy, but 24 hours a day, they're thinking of ways to manipulate to get what they want. And we're working on that. We're working on better training. There's an eye in the sky just about everywhere in the jail, and the investigator does a great job. He trained me as an investigator, so I trust him.
All right, we will wrap up with Ms. Hopper.
We have, there's a body scanner out there right now, and I think it works as well as operators, as well as it can. I'm not sure that would have been, a big purchase for me, but training and doing your due diligence and, just reinforcing how important it is to watch for contraband coming in the back door. But there was a big study that shows that, unfortunately, officers are bringing contraband in. And I believe that we've just recently, experienced that at the jail, that, contraband was being brought in by an officer. I don't think it's ever, they've been transparent about it, but.
So now we will finish with our closing statements from each candidate. Just a reminder, it's 1 minute, just like the rest of the questions, and no new issues should be brought up. You should just be kind of recapping everything, giving your objectives and your goals, and we will start with Mr. Bonta.
Thank you. Once again, thank you all for having us to let us all speak. I appreciate that. Franklin County, I've been 19 years serving as some sort of correctional officer, deputy jailer, detective, deputy, and this community is very, very important to me. I have a spectacular career with 0 write-ups in my file. My integrity speaks for that. I ask for your vote to keep me as your Franklin County jailer so I can get this jail back on track after this COVID-19 and get to where we want to go. Better raises, better benefits, better training. And I think we can do that. My staff at the Franklin County Jail, let me back up for a second. I haven't thanked them tonight. And they do a job that is not fun most of the time. And they're not getting a raise this year. And the glass is still half full because they're glad to have a job and they believe in Franklin County and Franklin County Jail. So to my staff, thank you very much for coming in to work every day. I'll end with, I just ask for your vote and let me continue to keep serving you as Franklin County citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hopper, your 1 minute closing statement.
The last thing I would like for everyone to remember is that I am running against candidates backed by professional politicians and those who have keeping the status quo at the jail in their best interest. Unlike them, I have no obligation to anyone except the citizens of Franklin County. With that being said, please help me become your next jailer in Franklin County. Go to my website, Tracy Hopper for Jailer 2020. Go to my Facebook, Tracy Hopper for Jailer 2020. Share this with your friends, talk to your family, let people know the issues that we are plagued with at the jail. It is very important that we no longer vote for our neighbors, our friends and friends of friends because they ask you to. Get involved, know what's going on. It's very important to be educated about what we are spending $4.5 million on at that jail. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Sandifer, your 1 minute closing statement.
I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to run for this office. I've been a constable in this county. I'm in my 8th year, and I appreciate the fact that people voted me into that office. I think I've done strides to make it a better office. I've always looked out for the county, all the citizens of the county. Even though we're voting districts, I've helped out throughout the county. I think I can make a big change at the jail. Everybody I talk to says they want to change at the jail. Bottom line is, if you want to change, you got to vote an outsider in. And that leaves you 2 people to vote for. That's me, Richard Sandifer, or Tracy Hopper. Because other than that, everybody else is employed by the jail. And you're not going to change it if you don't change it. So it's up to the voters. If you want to change, here's your opportunity to make a big change. And I ask for everyone to vote for me come June 23rd. Well, the month of June now.
All right. We want to thank our candidates and our panelists, as well as our sponsors, including Frankfort Plant Board, Channel 10 or Cable 10, Capital City Communications, and the State Journal for their time and support of this important event. And on behalf of the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce, we hope that this forum has given you the information you need for the upcoming election.